Hello, my name is Jan Buitelaar. I'm a child psychiatrist working at the Radboud University Medical Center and the Donners Institute in Nijmegen in the Netherlands. I'm one of the chairs of the Autism ENIGMA working group, the working group on autism spectrum disorders. It's my pleasure to give you a short introduction to our work on autism and particularly a short introduction to the concept of autism. Autism is in fact part of the broader spectrum of what we call neurodevelopmental disorders. It's part of a family of related disorders, which includes, among others, autism or autism spectrum disorder. It also includes attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, communication disorders and language disorders, intellectual disability, learning problems and motor disorders. And it's called a family because these group of disorders have common related characteristics as early onset early in life. They are unfolding while developmental problems and developmental processes take place, and they share strong overlap both in person and within families. So autism is one of the best well-known developmental disorders. It's characterized by pervasive problems in social interaction, communication and language, and also by repetitive behaviors and abnormal sensory processing. About 1/3 of all individuals with autism have intellectual disability that's, let's say, delayed or abnormal intellectual development and problems in self-care and autonomy. Autism is also characterized by a strong overlap with other mental disorders like mood and anxiety, sleep problems, ADHD. Comorbidity with ADHD is prevalent in at least 30 to 50% of all those with autism, irritability, aggression, self-injury. And there is also a high risk for seizures, particularly in preschoolers between age 3 and 6, and also at young adult age. Autism is also associated with higher prevalence of somatic disorders like immune dysfunction and gastrointestinal disorders. The abnormal sensory processing symptoms have been added to autism in the recent DSM-5 definition published in 2013. And this is just an example of a boy who is completely absorbed during the whole day in eliciting specific sensory stimuli and listening and feeling and paying attention to the stimuli over the whole day. This is another example of this. It is without saying that this strong embeddedness, absorption by these abnormal sensory processes and experiences will detract from his ability to develop socially. And one of the more recent areas of research in autism is to try to identify and better understand the impact of these early sensory abnormalities on later social, communicative, and emotional behavior in individuals with autism. If we talk about autism, we can at the same hand have the perspective of a dimensional view. So autism can be viewed as the extreme of normal variation. It's the quantitative model. And you can also say that within that quantitative model, there is differences between all individuals in terms of their social, emotional, and communicative competence. But these differences are not per se to be equated with the presence of a disorder or an abnormality. And the dimensional view is particularly useful for research because we can quantify whether individuals are strongly or more in a subtle way different from average. And we can relate that to, for example, cognitive development, biomarkers, and brain development. Then the other view is, of course, the classic view. We can conceptualize autism as just a binary category that when you meet the DSM criteria for autism, you are a case. and when you don't meet the criteria, you are a non-case or you are in control. So this is the qualitative view. It's a psychopathological view, and it's taken autism as a category. Although very recently we have introduced the 4Ds to describe, let's say, the different perspectives on autism more accurately. Is autism a disease? If disease would mean that we know not only the syndrome definition, so the collection of symptoms, but would also know the causality, the pathophysiology, then in most cases, autism cannot qualify as a disease. It can qualify as a disorder because the disorder is taken as the grouping of similar signs and symptoms that often co-occur, and that's defined by, for example, the DSM definition. Autism can also be viewed as a disability. People with autism have problems with some skills. Some skills are not up to date or relatively delayed or deviant from, let's say, age-appropriate norms and references. But the other point of view, and that links up with the neurodiversity view, is to say autism is per se more like a difference. People with autism are different in their behavior. They differ in terms of cognitive development. They may have also special skills, for example, a specific focus and a keen sense of detail. And so they have strengths and weaknesses, and they are not per se abnormal, diseased, disorders, or disabled. This slide is to give you a sort of summary of our current view on the pathophysiology and the etiology of autism. So autism is strongly driven by genetic factors. And these genetic factors are both common variants, so genetic variation that occurs naturally in the population in 5 or more % of all people. We all have these common variants, but some of these common variants may give you a tiny push in the direction of autism. And it may be that when you have not one, not two, but maybe dozens of maybe hundreds of these common variants that each gives a push into the direction of autism, you are at higher liability to develop autism. But there are also rare genes that are occurring not frequently, maybe in less than 1%, in 1 in 1,000, 1 in 10,000 in the general population, but that have a strong effect. These genes on itself are more likely to give you a strong push, a very strong push in the direction of developing of autism. And current views also converge on that. It might be the interplay between the genetic background by the common genes and the rare genes that finally, let's say, give you the push to autism. But in addition to genetic factors, recent paradigms also pay attention to immunology, infections, and the microbiome. And so people with autism may be more prone to autoimmune diseases. Autoimmune diseases or infections and immune dysfunctions are also much more co-occurring in family members of people with autism than in the general population. And there is also interesting data that disturbances of the microbiome, that's the whole of all bacteria in your gut, may give to dysregulations of your gastrointestinal system, but also may interact with the immune system and set up the gut-brain immune axis. And this may lead to, for example, leaky gut hypothesis, that are abnormal digestive products that enter the general circulation, enter the brain and disrupt brain functioning, or that immune factors altogether also increase the risk for immune dysregulation and inflammation in the brain. Two of the neurotransmitter systems, GABA and glutamate, have also been implicated in the pathogenesis, the pathophysiology of autism, and particularly in terms of their balance. Overall, glutamate is the more excitatory immune system, GABA is the inhibitory immune system, and a disbalance in excitation and inhibition may disrupt proper plasticity and cortical formation early in development, and then altogether by the link with GABAergic and glutamatergic dysfunction, immune dysfunction, and or modulatory roles of the microbiome may disrupt brain functioning and gives rise to complex behavioral patterns like abnormal social interaction, communication, and impulsivity and rigidity that are then summarized as the autistic spectrum disorder. Thank you for your attention.